So please join with me as we welcome Danny Jarman.
Vice President of the Atheist Foundation of Australia. We've got a few of our other members here as well. First off, I've just been really impressed with today. The Atheist Foundation of Australia, I think you guys do such a great job. Brisbane Skeptical Society, Q Skeptics, what you've done with SkeptiCamp and even the Skeptics in the Pub. I've been to a few of those as well, and it's just, they're really, really good grassroots movement type things where you've got people on the ground and you can get together and form those communities and really make a difference, on a day-to-day basis, apart from what goes on sort of up in the sky. I'm going to be talking a little bit tonight about engaging with religious fundamentalism. So probably the first thing when I think about this is, should we always engage with religious fundamentalists? And put up your hands if you say you think yes. No? Maybe? Okay, so we've got a cross-reference there. But I would be in the camp of the maybes, because it really depends on the situation. We get, contacted by people, not just in Australia, but all over the place in various situations. And, it could be someone that's still living at home with like full-on fundamentalist parents, and they don't believe in God anymore, and they want to be able to be honest about who they are, but they can't, because if they do, there's a chance that they're actually going to get thrown out of home. They'll be homeless. There's no support structure there for them. So it's not always the best situation to really engage in religious, or engage against religious fundamentalism in every possible situation that you encounter it. We get contacted by people from Pakistan or from Saudi Arabia or some of these other countries where they don't necessarily have the freedoms that we do here to even do this. Like if you were to do this in certain countries, there'd probably be a mob outside. We'd all get dragged off, either sent to jail for whatever. We might disappear in the middle of the night when half a dozen people bang down our door. We don't necessarily have that problem here. Maybe, with another election or that sort of thing, it might get a little bit worse. But, we're seeing a lot of different aspects of how religion does impact our society here in Australia through policy and influence from lobby groups and those sorts of things. But we don't see the real extremism to a large extent. We do it occasionally, but not on a wide scale like theocracy, like some countries have. So on a personal level, if I was speaking to, say, a young teenager, and they said, I just don't believe in God anymore. My parents do, and I want to be honest. I want to say to my dad or my mum, look, I just don't believe this stuff anymore. How should I go about doing it? I would really be cautious about giving advice to someone in that situation without having a good understanding of how their parents are going to react to that. And sometimes that's a very difficult thing for you to even determine. And so often the best policy is actually to urge caution in those situations. If you can't guarantee your safety and security and the roof over your head, sometimes, it's better to pull your head in a little bit. If you look at sort of a larger scale where you've got the larger family unit, we've recently come out as atheists over the last few years. Tess and I were leaders in a Christian church, and obviously everyone that didn't agree with us, they were wrong, and we were right. We had the truth. To clarify, it was a Protestant Christian church. So all of the other Christians were also wrong. We were an evangelical Protestant Christian church. Yeah, that's... hang on. We were a Pentecostal, evangelical, Protestant Christian church, and all the others were wrong. I think that's it, yeah. Hang on. We were fundamentalist, Pentecostal, evangelical, Protestant Christians, and we had the truth. That was it. Wait. We were dominionist, fundamentalist, Pentecostal, evangelical, Protestant Christians. That's it, yes. And all the rest were wrong. We had the truth. And anyone that didn't agree with our particular version of Christianity, which was, I guess, just one of 30,000 different versions of the truth, they were wrong. And we would, I was very active in trying to teach people where they were wrong. But sometimes they just didn't listen. They were just too skeptical. But I knew I was a skeptic. Even as a Christian, I was a skeptic. And if anyone asked me, I would say, yeah, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical about all of what you believe. But I had this little walled off, and Martin, brought it up. He wasn't his idea, he stole it from someone else. So I can't remember who he stole it from, so it's my idea. And the concept of sacred ideas. We had a sacred idea, and that sacred idea was not so much that the Bible, is the literal word of God, but our interpretation of the Bible was the word of God, because there's thousands of denominations that all believe that the Bible is the inerrant word of God. They just cut and dice different bits. We'll believe this one, we won't believe that one, we'll interpret it this way, we'll interpret it that way. It's like cafeteria Christianity. You walk down and you say, I'll have a bit of this, a bit of that. No, I don't like the pumpkin in Leviticus, and I'll have some of this. And you form this belief system. And in reality, it's just you're taught it. And, we sometimes sit there on our balcony and go, how the hell did we get frigging roped into this thing? And it's when Martin put up the thing with, here's the relationship between the Bible, and then that has all of these other things. It isn't like that. Once you accept this initial premise, you start going down the rabbit hole. And then you're accepting this, and because that's true, then, that must mean this is true. And then if that's true, that means this is false. So you end up in this place where you're trying to defend the indefensible in a lot of cases. And we still have family members that are in that situation. And when we came out as atheists, they were not happy. Not happy at all. We had, people in our lounge room screaming at us in front of our kids that we're all going to hell. It's not a nice thing at all. It's psychological abuse. But they don't see it as that. They don't see that they're psychologically abusing you. What they see is they're trying to help you because you're deceived in some way. You're controlled by Satan. Or you are Satan, in my case. And I'm in control of Tess. She doesn't have a mind of her own. And we've even told her, Tess was an atheist 2 weeks before I was. It's not my fault. It's not me. But if you've got a family situation like that, where there is no issue with safety and security and those sorts of things, you have the choice where you can engage with the religious fundamentalists. And you can stand your ground. You can choose to either continue on and live your life as a lie and put this veneer on to keep peace with the family and so that Christmas dinners are pleasant and all of this sort of stuff. But if in that process you're constantly being psychologically abused, and your kids are being psychologically abused every time they go and visit, you know, they go for a sleepover and they come back and they say, Dad, why are they saying, if you believe in evolution, you're stupid? And these are scientific concepts that we had never brought up with our kids, because we thought, well, they're too young to really understand it anyway. But it forced our hand in having to address it, because if we didn't address it, and they know that I'm on YouTube defending science and teaching people about evolution and engaging with, you know, people on Facebook or the AFA forums or those sorts of things, and they see that their cousins are saying, oh, your parents are wrong because of this, that actually impacts how our kids view us. So we, you know, after a fair amount of time and about to do it and then pulling back and that sort of thing, we had to bite the bullet, and we had to say, look, if we don't do something here, this is going to impact our kids' relationship within the family. It's going to impact how our kids view us. And we would rather our kids see us standing up and fighting against this stuff and fighting for what there's evidence for. And that was tough for us. We're pariahs at the moment anyway. It was going all right up until about a week ago again. And yeah, then the phone call started and all this other stuff started happening, but we're used to it now. You know, it's tough. It may not ever change, but it's sort of out of our control. What we've done is we've drawn a boundary, and we've said, look, we're happy to go to your place, we're happy to do your things, but if you cross this line, there is going to be a consequence to it. And so we've attached a negative consequence to it, and now they have a choice. And one of the things we have found is that they have pulled back, because they know if they say this or they say that, or it's like, okay, let's go. Let's have a chat. But you've got to make sure you're in the right situation to do that. Again, some families you may be able to do it, some you may not. But sometimes you just got to put your own integrity up front. When you look at the larger sphere and you're talking about public engagement with religious fundamentalism, it's a very, very different story. Because out in the marketplace of ideas, what you'll see in religious fundamentalism is a quest to really control the narrative, control how terms are used, how things are framed. Perfect example is what we see with climate change. How they frame it, how they demonise science and try and reduce the integrity of science and the way that the general public that doesn't have a good scientific understanding views science. You know, 50 years ago, 100, probably not 100, but I'd say 50 years ago, just after DNA was discovered, science was really at a high in terms of its public perception. Now you've got this white-anting going on with these institutes and think tanks and those sort of things, and their whole job is to discredit science. Because if you can discredit science, then whenever you've got a product that you need to sell, or if you own a big company that needs to change its business processes and it's going to cost us $10 billion over the next 10 years to do it, we would rather spend $5 million on a think tank to change public perception to let us continue to do this and keep breaking in an extra 10 billion a year, which is, you know, not a very good situation. I must say, has anyone ever heard of the Seven Mountains before? Okay, a few of you. Seven Mountains strategy, as it's promoted in churches, and really promoted in a lot of churches these days, is a concept that started in the US. Chris has got a really good blog post which outlines quite a lot of it. But basically, it's almost like a conspiracy theory thing, where Satan is control of society and we need to take it back for Jesus. And so they try and say, okay, how can we get people in business, government, media, the arts and entertainment, education, family and religion, and put people in place where they can influence policy decisions in those areas. And for most things like Catholic Church and all of that sort of stuff, they're not involved. This is the extremist end. These are the Pentecostals, the evangelicals, a lot of the Baptists, and all the little fringe churches that are like, you go in and it's like happy clappy, yeah, let's play some music for Jesus. Oh, now we've got to hand over our cash. And then, we'll get healed of something that, we never had in the first place. There's an angel on my shoulder. There's a demon in my heart. Where do I point this? Okay, I want to show you this. This is really cool. This is Australian religiosity. Now, I won't use this because that's not a pointer. And I know a lot of the guys earlier on, girls, used a laser pointer. I brought a more traditional pointer with me. So, what I want to show you is this is from, all of this data is from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, so it's all the census data. And it goes right back to, say, 1901, where 96.1% of people on the census indicated that they were Christian. A few little changes happened. The introduction of, well, really down here, was the ability not to answer the question, which was important, so you see a bit of a drop there. And then around about 1971, you see the no religion gets introduced. Yes. So what we see here is this big decline in Christianity, down to 61% on the last one. You see a big rise in no religion up to the last census, which is 22.3. Now, our statistician in the premises will be able to tell us that when you see this line going down like this and this line going up like that, that's called the awesome effect. And we really want to keep it going in that direction. Because this is actually, this one here, the Christianity one, that's actually made up of a whole range of different groups. And by my, projections, I'm thinking and feeling the good energy that is going to put this bottom one as the single biggest demographic category in this particular question on the census. If not at the next one, definitely the one after. So next year we've got a census. The year after, we've got another one. The reason it's important is because these numbers are factored into government studies and how they go about their planning and that sort of thing. And it also indicates who they need to pander to. When they're going out to try and say, well, what policies are we going to have to put in place to get people to vote for us? As this number declines, this group up here becomes less influential. When we look at the last census, this is pretty cool as well, in some respects. In other ways, it's a bit sad. But what we have is all of the various categories of religion and no religion and that sort of thing, broken down by the age of the person. So what we see is the people up here, 75, 85 or whatever, really committed Christian group. And that sort of really drops down to this group here, which is sort of the lowest. That's just under 50% now. That's pretty cool. Up here, it's obviously bodgy data because it's not the 4-year-old that's filling in the census form. But we're seeing the younger generation is coming through. The younger generation that's been brought up on the internet, outside of that cloistered environment of the four walls of their church. In the global marketplace of ideas, this is rising. And you're going to see it continue to rise too. I really like that. Unfortunately, people sort of drop off the end, which, see, this is where I guess there is an advantage to homeopathy and those sorts of things, because it's the non-skeptical people that are going to actually be dropping off the end, which is Not very good. Just ask my family. Okay, so we've got some numbers here. This is pretty cool. Now, actually, with this, and thanks to Cassandra earlier, I was tossing up whether to, use t-tests or ANOVA or Pearson's correlation, significance probability, or effect size. And I went back and forth and all of that sort of thing, and then I went, no, I might just press the sum button on Excel. And that seemed to give me a pretty good response. But this is a comparison between the 2001 census and the 2011 census. And over that 10-year period, there was pretty significant interesting things. Now, obviously, a lot of this is my opinion and anecdote, and I've got a good feeling about this, but what I see when I look at this sort of data is, number one, the population grew by 14.6% in that 10-year period. But all the Christian, and I can't break the other ones down too much because they only have one category for it, but the entirety of, say, Christianity only grew by 3%. So the population grew by 14, Christianity, the major religion in Australia, only grew by 3%, so they're not keeping up with the population growth in Australia. By definition, the longer this sort of trend goes on, the less influence that group has on social, social structure. It's interesting when you have a look at some of the individual categories too, because while some grow at a rate higher, others don't. Some actually go backwards. We've got salvos, 15% less salvos. Why is that? I'd have to think as well, with all of the child abuse scandals and that have come out with the Royal Commission, that's probably going to have a hit on the Catholicism number. And, there's a couple of things that we can probably guarantee. One is, over the next 10 years, there's still going to be no evidence for the existence of God. No demonstrable evidence, anyway. There's evidence in how I feel. But, and there's probably going to be more scandals, whether it's child abuse or this pastor raping that parishioner or whatever. And all of that is a marketing nightmare for churches. And look, I understand that, not all skeptics are atheists, not all atheists are skeptics and that sort of thing, but there's probably pretty broad cross-section crossover in the room. Gee, crossover sounded loud then. But if you, and this is a subjective thing. I went through, and obviously in each of the denominations you will have an extremist end and you'll have a more moderate end. But in just the people I've talked to over time, I sort of got an indication that certain denominations are really more conducive to the fundamentalist end. And so when you look at, say, like Baptists and Brethren and all of that sort of thing, and you actually split the numbers out into those categories based on fundamentalists and more moderate ones, you end up with some pies. And fundamentalists back in 2001, if you just use the categories I've used, you can pick your own. And being a skeptical group too, I expect you all to go back and double check those numbers that I had up there, which are downloadable from the ABS. But 7.8% would be considered fundamentalists out of the whole group. A lot of people that mark down religion on the census, they're not really that religious. They might go to church once in a while. They don't think about God in their day-to-day lives, or they just mark Catholic down, to make mum happy. You know what I mean? But in 2011, even though they didn't keep up with the population, the fundamentalist section is actually becoming a bigger piece in the pie. So you've probably got more of the moderates that are dropping out, losing their religion, becoming atheists, which is great news. But what it means is there's going to be a growing group within Christianity, my prediction, my prophecy. I'm a prophet. Actually, my wife was a prophet. That was pretty cool. I enjoyed having a prophet at home. You try and get something past a prophet. Even when they're wrong, they know they're right. But yeah, thank you. So as that grows, it's like a remnant. I mean, there was a thing up earlier on about flat Earth and that sort of thing, and you think, oh, no one believes that stuff anymore. I was on a Facebook group only a few weeks ago, arguing with flat earthers. And then I had geocentrists defending me. Which is pretty cool. It's like, these people believe this stuff because of, obviously, a fundamentalist belief and their version of the Bible and that sort of thing. But they disagree with each other, and they'll argue with each other because they're taking certain scriptures literally, whereas others aren't. But the thing about, say, geocentrists and flat earthers, they've got no social equity when it comes to policy. They can't influence anything. You get a politician, run for office, say, hey, I believe in a flat earth. It's like, thank you for playing. Game over. That's it. But we've still got a very, very strong presence out there with religious fundamentalism where they do influence public policy because they give the perception that they own the Christian vote when they don't. You know, one of the biggest ones, you know, it who shall not be named, is a private company funded by a few groups, purports itself to be the representatives of Christianity, has the word lobby at the end. But they don't represent Christians. As a Christian, they never represented me. But politicians think they do because they're a voice that's in their ear all the time. They have full-time lobbyists that are constantly in the politicians' ears. If you don't, you know, put these policies in place, then we won't urge our followers to vote for you and that sort of thing. And that's where we can engage. I mean, I would assume at a SkeptiCamp on a Saturday, on a cold winter's day, that basically everyone in this room is an activist. Just being here makes you an activist. Because you've got to care, you've got to be interested enough. And different people are going to have different skills in how to deal with fundamentalism or science or homeopathy or chiropractic. Any of the topics that we deal with, there's different avenues. And, you know, you can be on social media and just share things. You can do a full debate where you go back and forth with someone. You can debunk some form of creationism or Ken Ham and that. Did everyone see the Bill Nye, Ken Ham thing? Did you enjoy it? Did you watch the whole thing? Who was before it really against Bill Nye standing up and doing that? A few? I was. I was very much, I think it's a really bad idea, Bill Nye doing that. Because it just gives legitimacy to these things. It's like on a stage and there's two, it's a 50-50 proposition like Fox News does it. But I noticed something really different this time that I haven't seen in a lot of those creationist type debates, creationist versus scientist type debates. And that was the reaction within the Christians after it. And I saw so many Christians on social media distancing themselves from answers in Genesis and saying, wait, we don't believe that shit. Can I say shit? Yeah? Can I use the F word? No? What about the C word? No? Okay. I won't mention chaplaincy then. But a lot of them moving away from it. And that was, to me, that was a turning point. That's where young earth creationism is actually losing some of its luster. It's losing some of its influence. It's now almost heading towards the geocentrism type pool. I mean, there's a great example of people that engage with religious fundamentalism is actually sitting in this audience tonight. And what I often see is someone will do this big post, say on Facebook, and it'll be, God says this, and he means this, and his scripture this, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he'll thoughtfully go through it all, and then he'll just go, bullshit. And then they get flustered. And you say, wow, no, and they'll do this another really long post, da-da-da-da-da. And again, he'll thoughtfully go through it all, and then he'll go, you're making it up. And even something like that, if we all did stuff like that, even if we don't have the expertise to deal with, anything that comes out in the, the comments in the papers, or you see a Facebook post or whatever, you can just challenge it. Put the ball back in their court. You've got to justify this. How do you know that? Is there any evidence for that? You don't necessarily have to be a theologian or a scientist to be able to go through that. You all know rubbish when you see it. I mean, if it's in that grey area, where it could be true or something like that, left brain, right brain, or learning styles, or all this sort of thing, then you can put a little bit more thought to it. But if it's someone saying that Jesus rode a dinosaur, have fun with it. It's so much better, and so much better for the audience, because you're not really dealing with them. They're the fundamentalists. They believe this. They've got the sacred idea. Have fun with it, because there's 400 people watching it on some forums or on some Facebook pages. If they see that these people can't back up their claims, they go, oh. But what does happen with the fundamentalists, when they do get beat down enough, they can change. I still get messages today on YouTube. I've got Jarman67 YouTube channel. And I've been doing, evolution and science and all that sort of stuff. I originally started that as a Christian, and then became an atheist, which made it interesting. But I didn't lose many subscribers, because most of my subscribers were atheists, I think. I might have lost 100. But I'll get a message in my inbox, and it'll be like, Jarman, I'm not sure if you remember me. We spoke a while ago. I was a bit of a dick. I'm an atheist now, and I just wanted to apologise. And I'll go, who the hell's this? And I'll look back through, the Google emails and that sort of thing, and I go, I remember that 2 years ago I had a big back and forth with this person, and they were a full-on creationist, the full Ken Ham, Ken Hovind stuff. You don't necessarily have to, break them now, today. All you got to do is crack the eggshell. And the eggshell with these people is biblical literalism. And it's not necessarily the scripture itself or where it came from. It's how do you interpret it? Do you think that's moral? Do you think it's moral? I don't get how a God that commands some of the things in there, you could class him as good. I mean, I'm a father. If someone rapes my daughter, and you've probably all heard this, and the rapist comes up to me and says, well, here's 50 shekels. He now gets to marry her, and she can never divorce him. That's a command from this God in the Bible that fundamentalists believe. They try and justify Old Testament this and that sort of thing, but it doesn't get away from the fact that that is an immoral act, and that any God that commands that can't be moral. So you must be interpreting it wrong. And that messes with them. And it doesn't, they try and justify it, and the cognitive dissonance and this and that. They'll go away and they'll try and come up with an explanation. They'll go to their apologetics websites and that, but you've just cracked the eggshell. It may take a year, it may take 2. They may repair the eggshell because of the cloistered environment they're in. But if we can just keep chipping away at these sort of things, it does make a difference. It really, really does. I've seen it with people that I would never have thought would come around and either moderate their beliefs to the point where they're benign, and so, they accept science, but definitely get them away from that fundamentalist edge. Okay? Now, a really important slide coming up. Question time.
Anyone got a question there?
Are there any?
Got time for one question, so if anyone wants to pop to the back mic there, we can field a question there.
I must have done a great job then. Okay.
That was really informative. Thank you very much again, Danny. It's funny actually, going through sort of internet forums and things like that, I often start to think that Idiocracy might actually be a documentary and not a movie. But these kind of slides are obviously quite encouraging. So it's always nice to know that we're sort of winning at least one battle